And we are live.
Wow, great.
I know.
Good morning.
That's it. No, I know, that's it. So we will, yeah, we'll just get started. People will join when they join. And so firstly, Donald, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and talking to us this morning for you, this afternoon for me.
Right, right. I appreciate you too. I appreciate your kind invite, and also I salute both of you and dedicated your resource, personal, the passions and the efforts into this space to be real champions and pioneers, driving a difference in this space. I admire you, and I feel honored to be part of this conversation.
Oh, thank you,
Oh,
thank
that's
you. So I know.
my girl spirit's going there. So yeah.
I wasn't expecting you to say that, Donald. So thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you. So
Okay.
listen, Margie, I'm going to hand over to you to kick us off, because you know me. Once I start talking, that's it. So I'm going to hand over.
Hey, well,
I'm going to hand over to you, and then yeah, we'll I want to hear Donald's story. So I'm ready.
We have tons to talk about. So for those of you that are meeting Donald for the first time, he's the senior director at Walmart in the global office of culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's a lot for me this morning. And so I'm grateful that Donald agreed. We've had some, other conversations in the past where I was kind of hinting like, hey, do you think you could come on live? Because I think people really need to not only meet you, but hear your story and hear what Walmart's doing. This is a massive company that has an influence all over the world. And the commitment that your corporation is showing to the DEI space, I don't think is shared enough, right? So there was a lot that I learned from you over the months of I had no idea. And one of our early conversations was, COVID, and my daughter with special needs. I wouldn't have survived without Walmart. So I'm just gonna say that right there. Like without Walmart during COVID, I don't know what I would have done. But everybody who has, a different look at diversity, equity, and inclusion from leadership role, which I feel you do. I think you have a very interesting perspective on this and how you move forward in this has a backstory. So it took us a few conversations before I got your backstory. And I want to start there. I want you to share, if you're willing, with the audience, your story and kind of where you came from childhood until, the last 24, 25 years with Walmart.
Wow, my gosh. Thank you for your kindness, Margie, and thank you for being our loyal customer and choose Walmart as your retail of choice. And I know our customers and every one of you have a lot of choice to make. When it comes to which retail, which stores you're going to shop, and you trust too. And so for that, I truly appreciate you and appreciate every one of you to be part of these conversations and to show your interest, the personal passion about the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And, let me share with you Margie's request. I'm going to share with you my once upon a time story, okay? And as some of you may tell, I was a boy and raised in Shanghai, China. And the Shanghai piece, you may not figure it out, but China piece might be easily figured out. And in my teenage time, and national chaos broke out in China. And it's called the Cultural Revolution. Some of you may have heard about that. And almost everything shutting down during almost a 10 years kind of a time period, including all schools. No schools in that period of times. And my formal education stopped in 7th grade, right? Because of the severe economic impact and the damage resulting from this revolutions, there was no jobs to offer in the city. And the millions of the middle school kids, the urban youth, like me were sent to the remote countryside to support yourself for working as a farmer. And at that time, I was 16 years old, and living in a remote, very small village, 1,000 miles away from my hometown, Shanghai. And we had no electricity, no tap water. And we were working 14 hours a day, no weekends. And we had, the payout of an annual income only allowed me to buy a train ticket, go back to Shanghai during the winter time, because that's a slow season in farming, right? And what shocked me most at that time was not that the poor living condition or the hardship of the labor, and it was the significant disparity, significant gap in economy, and between people living in city and the people living in countryside. When I was in city, I would never imagine there's so many people living in such a poor, absolute poverty condition. And that was the challenging situation for a 16-year-old teenager, right? And learning to support yourself through the hard labors and the living in the poverty conditions. I was wondering what my future would be. I mean, no one knows at that times, and what's the moving forward looks like, right? So instead of complaining about the situation, so what do I spend sometimes contemplating and about my life purpose and the values, and who am I, what is important to me, and what I want to achieve, and how can I achieve it. And I know I want to be successful in whatever I do when I grow up. And I also added one want. I want to help bridge the social, societal, economic gap, and close up that disparities and injustice. It's a lesson. It's a life lesson learned from this experience of living in the countryside. And it also, even at that time, I knew with the 7th grade educations, I won't be able to do anything to change, to contribute, to make a better life out of almost nothing, right? And so at that time, I asked my parents to mail me the textbook from 8th grade through the 12th grade. And that's the missing gap I have after my formal schooling, right? After those long days in the countryside, others went to bed, went to rest, but I spent extra hours in the reading and the learning. That way, I taught myself from 8th grade to 12th grade and completed the secondary education. And that extra effort that prepared me to pass the entrance exam and enrolled in the universities after the country put an end to the revolution and resumed the higher education. And that experience reshaped my worldview. And I call it a defining moment for it doesn't matter to diversity, inclusion, or equity side of it. But it taught me invaluable lessons, and that stuck with me all the time. And never give up to the situation, to any situations you are in, right? Take ownership and of who you are and what you want to achieve. Make a long story short. I can talk on and on for for the past history of my careers. But later I became a professor teaching the college in China. And after teaching the college for 8 years, I asked myself, Am I getting too comfortable? And am I making an impact? Right? And can I change the trajectory to make a difference? And eventually made up my mind to disrupt the career journeys in China, and came to the United States for graduate studies. Keep in mind, at that times, I was a college professor. My wife was a gynecologist in China. So we just give up all of those and come up to the United States and started a brand new life in in this totally unfamiliar culture environment to start a new life, right? And and also I later on I started my Walmart career in the IT areas, and after going through various IT roles, I asked the same career-related questions. And am I truly, get too comfortable in the role I've been doing? Because you become a smear, right? You are going through, in and out, and you feel comfortable about what you've been doing. And am I continue to contribute to bring the value to the table or to the team, right? And if I change my career, shift or transfer to a different role or different areas, and will it accelerate my the career journey? Then I also did a big career shift from IT areas to the office diversity. Started my D&I DI journeys when the companies established an office of diversity to centralize the DI efforts enterprise-wide. I think that's my story in a nutshell.
Okay, so I think I need to exhale, right? I'm holding my breath of that whole thing, and I have heard your story before, but it's incredible, Donald. It's incredible that I think, as we have leaders kind of self-educate and go through training, your story has to be the story that people hear, because I think it's exactly what drives your approach to D&I. It's that lived experience. It's that intrinsic motivation to make change and not to stand still. And Shereen talked about this before, you start where you stand, right? And we did a previous live show where Jesse Awuji said something like 90% of people don't participate in their own rescue. You not only participate in your own rescue, I mean, it is an example of how to pull yourself out. But with that, I'll let Shereen talk. I want to make sure you get in there and
no. Listen, I'm gonna listen.
Story to me, right? So,
yeah, no. Well, firstly, Donald, thank you for sharing that. And I think that key thing that you said, right, about getting comfortable with just doing the same and always thinking to yourself, am I too comfortable? Because actually, what you're talking about is, am I maximizing the impact I can make doing what I'm doing, isn't it? That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Willing to take a risk. And of course, that's the well-informed risk. And when you're willing to take the risk, there's opportunities for you to grow, change in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the, well, listen, I know before Margie is gonna jump in now, but how do you think that shaped how you approached diversity, inclusion? And then I know you've got a story to tell about the equity piece, but we'll get to that. But how did your experience start to shape the way that you approached it within Walmart?
Yeah, I think, as you can tell from my personal stories and the life lessons I learned, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion is always rooted into my value systems, and always would like to contribute to that kind of efforts to bring the equity, to bring the inclusions, to get everyone engaged, connected, involved, to make a But that's the only way you can change the world, right? And no matter how, that's part of the reason. So let me share you with you another story. So when I joined Walmart, I had planned to spend 2 years with the company. Then I go back to China. The reason behind that is in China, all my career experiences is in academia. So I don't have any business related experiences in it all. That's why I say, hey, I'm already in the United States. Let me stay another 2 years and learn the business, and then go back to China. After 24 years, I'm still here. The key things retain me, I think, the one is the culture. The culture aligned, corporate culture aligned with your value system. You brought it up. It was brought it up in China, right? And the second one, biggest, I think, differentiator is the platform. The Walmart give you a huge platform to really expand your sphere of influence. And whatever we do, and we impact so many peoples. We already have 2.3 million associates within the company. And thinking about our customer base, and thinking our supply chain. And if we do things right, and we can influence so many people in so many different ways, that's one things I value most by working in this space.
And I think, one of the things that I love, I've read some of your work. Obviously, we're talking today, right? And I think it's just this idea of understanding the impact that you can make with the platform that you have. Walmart has 2-point-something million associates, right? So when you add in the network effect of how, when you make a difference to those associates and how they can then make a difference, that is massively powerful, even if you're in a really small company, right? It's not about the size thing. It's just about understanding the network effect of change, isn't it?
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And, the Walmart started the DI journey in 2003. So think about it. It's a 17-year journey, right? And we went through the several different stages. I would say, evolved, right? Evolved from the started was the compliance based the program, then to the program driven path. Now we kind of transitioning over to the commitment of fostering an inclusive culture change. And it's no longer just a standalone programs, but it's a driving a culture change. A culture change to us means you are building a diverse workforce across the levels, reflecting your customer base. Right, and you are building this. You are fostering an inclusive environment where everyone is invited, welcomed, valued, and given the opportunity, equitable opportunities, fair opportunities to unleash their full potential. I think this is a huge transition. That kind of transformation requires new thinking, new ways of thinking, and new ways of working.
Yeah, Donald, so that's a good transition. You have pillars, right? So there's some very, very specific pillars that you incorporate into this D&I work, and that Walmart does. So can you kind of walk us through what those pillars are?
Yeah. I think, we've been focusing on, I would say, those 4 areas, and you can call it strategic pillars, to try to make a difference. And number 1 is the leadership commitment. And number 2 is D&I and talent strategy integration. So you bring those 2 together and not separate them apart. And the third piece is a data-driven decision. And the last one is fostering a safe airspace for everyone. And I think let me unpack a little bit on those 4 areas to make sense. And leadership,
Okay.
commitment, and the follow through. And because it's a follow through is very important. Because in the old days, or you can call it the old corporate playbook, people more focus on commitment, on words, and on statement, right? And the corporate statement and versus
Yes.
know, you need to shift it to the action, to follow through, make sure what you committed is real, right? And
Mhm.
CEO demonstrated the strong leadership. That's what we're lucky enough. He demonstrated the strong leadership commitment and publicly pledged to 3 national initiatives for achieving the gender parity and racial parity across the levels by 2030. And it is all levels. It's not just averagely looking at your workforce, right? Even in his C-suite,
Mhm.
it need to achieve the parity, and then also hold ourselves accountable by measuring, reporting, and acting all the time. And it's not just the one-time deals and the one-time commitment. We call it done, right? The second piece, integrate DNI or DEI in our talent life cycle from recruiting, hiring, onboarding, development, succession planning, and performance evaluations. And
Mhm.
it shouldn't be an afterthought. DEI
Right.
should be an afterthought, right? And ensure our policies and our practices in the decision-making times are fair, equitable, and bias-free.
Mhm.
Third areas is data-driven, right? Data-driven decision makings, and leverage the data stories to inform our strategy and our action plan. And we provide our officers in-depth diversity and inclusion data. So they are visible through the current status and the current issues, and they can make a timely decision and adjust their action plan to address the challenge and also course correct.
Right.
And the last areas is about cultivate a safe airspace for our associate to share their experience, their desire, their feel, and the concerns through so many different channels. So it's a part of the building a culture change, to nurturing and a culture change. And through so many different channels, like ERGs, meetings, and the full connected voice, and the listening sessions, and town halls, the business meetings. So after, I mean, like in the past, I would say in the past 3-4 months, we encourage each of associates do 3 things.
Mhm.
Take 3 action items and to practice it intentionally. Listen,
Right.
learn, lead from where you are. We call it the 3 L's, right? And those 3 L's aligned with the leadership with empathy. You started with the cognitive empathy by listening,
Mhm.
and then you shifted it over to the emotional empathy. That means
Mhm.
internalize what you learn, and you put yourself into the emotional status of the others. Then you ended up by compassionate empathy. That means take action and act to make a change, to make
Right.
sure you take care of everyone and everyone is included. I hope this answers give you a kind of pictures of those efforts areas, especially in the past, during our pandemic challenge, coupled with, the racial injustice and hate crimes. And we really pay very close attention to ensure we do it in a right way. And we transitioning over the old playbook to the new playbook.
So sorry, Margie, can
Yeah,
I like
no,
come with while I want to? Yeah, because I love it. Thank you, Donna. No, I love it. So I think there's two kind of standout things for me in what you just said. When you talk about the 3 L's, right? So that to me is such a powerful sign of empowering your associates to not only be part of the change, but also to lead the change. So you're basically giving them permission, aren't you? Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, exactly. Because one of the lessons we learn from our DEI journey is DEI is cannot be done or cannot be achieved. The equity and inclusion is just focus on you dump the responsibilities on a chief diversity officers or depend the office diversity or ERGs to do the work. And
right.
You've got to get everyone react to it. You've got to invite everyone along the journey and to make a difference. It takes a village.
It does. And before we went live, we were just talking about the fact that at Walmart, you changed the name of your office. Can you just share the rationale behind the change and what it was used to signify? Because I think that's a really important piece for people to just hear and understand that.
Yeah, sure. And the name of our office is kind of mouthful, and a global office of culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now we used to call it the CDI, culture, because this is 5 years ago. We combined the corporate culture with diversity and inclusion. So we feel like the corporate culture and the core values are the roots of our diversity and inclusion efforts. Mm-hmm. Recently, we added equity between diversity and inclusion. There's a reason it's in between, because it's equity. If there's no equity, diversity and inclusion won't happen. Equity plays a bridge to connect both sides, to make sure if we have equity in place, then inclusion will be real. And when we say a culture change, not just a program change, that means not the start end. And it need to be a norm. We're building a norm through equity and through using equity to connect diversity and inclusion to make it a part of our DNA.
And can I ask, because one of the things that I think I spend most of my time with CEOs and executive leadership teams, trying to get them to understand that to make the changes that we need to see, they need to shift their thinking to think about equity rather than equality, because we've all been thinking that we have to continue to give everyone more of the same, and that will magically get us to this super inclusion. What advice would you give them if they're still struggling to understand how equity plays a role in this?
Yeah, I think first of all, you've got to make sure you give the fair chance to everyone, right?
Right.
And then you need to make sure I'm not just satisfied by that state, and we need to make sure we treat people in a unique way and what they need. Mm-hmm. And means you need to pay extra efforts to deal with what's the specific needs and design, and different groups need to enjoy the opportunities you offer. Because different demographic groups or gender groups could have a different kind of needs, aspirations, and what the corporate or what the organizations can do better job is make sure I understand them right. I understand them in a more exact way. So this way we can differentiate the chance we give them, we provide them. So this way everyone can truly enjoy that environment. Everyone can, grow together. And I think this is a part of things we keep asking ourselves. Can we leverage science and to really inform our strategy and inform our effort and to elevate the quality of our work? For example, we ask ourselves, can we learn to ask questions out of our associates, our customers, like anthropologists, get to the real needs, right? And can we really learn and can we learn the real feeling and the way of thinking of our associates, like neuroscientists? Can we truly to analyze the situations or tough, challenging situations as a psychologist, and provide the solutions and options like design thinker? So all of those, I know this is a kind of go too far, but
no, not at all.
Make sure, and we do it in a right way. Take a right approach to make a right decision for everyone.
And I think it's so what you've just said there, Donald. That's why I don't think it's too far. And the reason why I say it's not too far is because I think too often when we are facing difficult challenges within an organizational context, we think we understand the problem, but we don't check we understand the problem. We don't listen hard enough because we just want to move to the solution and hope that magically putting in a solution is going to fix the problem, even if we're not 100% sure we know what the problem is. So that's why I think what you've just described is almost should be part of the playbook that everyone seeks to, be anthropologist, be psychologist, be sociologist, be neuroscientist, get into the depths of what that lived experience looks like, because only then can you then start to extrapolate what you might need to do differently.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So I just wanted to make sure we can have Donald talk about two things, because I know people have questions, and Donald.
Oh yes, sorry, I got so involved with what you're saying, Donald. I'm paying no attention.
I told you we get into these. It's like a conversation. We forget there's these people out there that want, that are supporting us all the time and have questions. So, two things real quick that I want you to be able to speak to before they ask questions is that people kind of assume in these large corporations that diversity and equity inclusion either doesn't exist, or it's just performative, or it's just very surface level. And what I've learned from you over the months is that, Walmart is getting in there and doing the work. And I mean, not doing the work at the upper levels to support people like from the bottom up. And so, you have education programs, which let me tell you what, my 14-year-old is going to be taking his butt down to Walmart at 16 and getting a job there because of the college programs. You have 101 college programs. And I am a believer that education is the great equalizer for those of us that that didn't have an opportunity to have an education without somebody helping us. The other piece is after the horrific death of George Floyd, Walmart came out, and most people don't know this, committed $100 million to equity work over the next 5 years. And if you could just, I know we don't have a lot of time, but briefly talk about that, because there's a piece in there of the restorative justice that just, that's what we need. We need people that have these massive organizations. If you guys can do it, the rest of us can do it.
Yeah. I think this is a wake-up call with George Floyd, the tragedy happening. And I'll see immediately, the share with the public, the statement. And also you may know Doug McMillan, our CEO, chairs the Business Roundtable.
Right.
It's the largest business platform with 208 CEOs of largest companies in the U.S. And he issued a statement, and it also committed to $100 million in the next 5 years to form a center for justice, for racial justice. And the center is already structured up right now. And because I kind of briefly mentioned earlier, we don't want to just follow the old corporate playbooks in the past. What the corporations are doing is after every this kind of a tragedy and societal events that happen, in the corporate, they issue a statement, public statement, and then the public affairs department select one or two of those community-based organizations and for the foundations to giving monies. Then they call it done. And the big difference is from this movement and the Black Lives Matter really shifted the older playbook to the new ones. The new ones is focusing on the specific, we call it the institutional areas, the functional areas, action, and tackle it in a systemic way. And our Center for Social Racial Justice is really focusing on 4 areas. One is finance. The second one is education. The third one is health. And the fourth one is the criminal justice areas. And our CEOs chairs we call it the shared value network, and really exploring the areas in those 4 pillars or 4 aspects, and looking into the opportunities internally, what we can do different to address all of those 4 areas. And then also what might be the sweet spots we can work with external entities and external stakeholders, like our supply chains, like the NGOs and the think tanks, and also the government agencies, and figure and how we'll do it together. And not only just by addressing the internal issues and the challenges we see, but also the external as well. Let me give you examples internal, how we connect the dots and between external and internal in those 4 areas. And when we talk about the finance and the internal, you may think it might be broader and it's not necessarily related with our within the companies, but actually we think more around the pay equity side of it, just to make sure you have a right, fair pay equity for every one of associates. Education is more around the development, learning, how we will be able to offer everyone, especially for the people of color and the woman, the fair chance to get re-skilled, right, and upskilled. So they are well prepared for the new digital era and not lag behind. And you're talking about the health and wellness. How can we offer the benefits, the right to address our social needs, and especially for women and people of color? And the criminal justice systems may think beyond the corporations, but we are thinking offer the second chance opportunities for people. So all of those things really you can connect it, and you can connect to address it. And we also leverage the groundwater metaphor to educate our associates and looking at this racial injustice in a more broader way versus, I'm just in a reaction mode, and address it I'm not quite sure. Are you familiar with the groundwater metaphor? It is a concept that brought it out. I think it's introduced by Joyce James and there's another author and in 2013, and it's talking about the metaphor goes like this: if you see a fish in the lake, right? When a fish is the floating belly up dead in the lake, it makes sense to analyze the fish. What's wrong with this fish, right? And imagine the fish is a student failing the education systems. And we ask, did he study hard enough?
Mm-hmm.
He get the support from school and the family, right? If half the fish in the lake are floating belly up dead, now we've got to analyze the lake. And imagine the lake is the education system, and half of the students are failing.
Mm-hmm.
Times we ask, might the system itself cause such a consistent and unacceptable outcomes? If so, how? Right? And now picture, you see 4 lakes. They connected to each other through the groundwaters. And in each of those 4 lakes, and half the fish are floating belly up. And what should we do? And it's time to analyze the groundwater.
Right.
How did the water in all these lakes ended up with the same contamination? And this, so we can imagine half the kids are failing the education systems, and half the kids suffering from ill and poor health in the health systems, and half are struggling in and out of the child welfare systems, and half are performing poorly in the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
It's often the same kid in each system.
Right.
So to fix a fish or clean up one lake at a time won't solve the problem. It won't work because of the toxic groundwater. Now we are living in a racially structured societies. That's what caused the racial injustice. We have a groundwater issue, and we need a groundwater solution.
I think this is probably the least that Shireen and I have ever talked. I think we're both like this.
I don't.
I know, like, whoo, we need about hours on this, but absolutely.
Yeah, let me just make sure I actually felt like crying when you said that, Donald, because you know what, and the reason why, and I'm not going to cry because it's like Monday afternoon, so I'm not going to cry, but okay, hold on, just let me say what I've got to say, is because I think about all these individuals all over the world who are trying to push, who are trying to achieve their potential, who are trying to achieve their dreams. And I'm thinking about all the times they have heard somebody say there is something wrong with them, but they never paid attention to the groundwater. And so I'm just thinking about all these people that have floated, to use your metaphor, into various aspects of life, whether it's employment, whether it's health, whether it's incarceration, to your point about the broader piece. And because we've been using the old playbook, like what you were saying before, we've never stopped for a minute and said, what about the groundwater? And I think that is beautiful. It's a beautiful metaphor, but also I think it brings into sharp relief almost. This is what we're trying to get society to address. This is what we can address within our organizations, to say, what does our own version of groundwater look like, isn't it? That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why I just thought it was so, it's validating, because that is exactly what we're trying to get to. That is exactly it, you know?
Yeah. So that's a pretty much why we are more thinking around ecosystem versus you treat the DEI just as a program.
Right.
When you have a ecosystems, you are thinking more around how I'm going to address this challenge from the root. There's a book called Upstream, and the author Dame Heath, right? Yeah, and he bring up the concept is we spend or waste so much energies and so much resources to really thinking downstream.
Right.
Downstream means in a reaction mode. You react to what happened, and then you don't really go into the upper end and figure out what caused that. What caused it in a institutional manner. And so then we can make sure in all of those issues and the challenge prevent it from happening, versus I put so much effort into addressing it, deal with it, cure it.
Absolutely. Margie, I'll let you talk, because I'm still like just getting myself together.
Well, I would love to have some of the people that are listening, because Donald, I know this is not a comfortable place for you to be, you know, in front of the camera and live, but I'm telling you, the love and the comments that are coming in, you know, this is why I was so grateful that you were willing to come out and talk, because this is not what we're hearing from leadership. This is not what we hear from leadership across systems. So thank you. And clearly, you know, Walmart leadership knows what they have in you. And I don't know, I'm kind of speechless for once. So I'm trying to just filter and take it all in, because we're usually so chatty, but it's a lot. And it's, you know, these are very serious issues. And, you know, you're coming from a humble leadership, lived experience space, and that is what's going to make change, right? That's what's going to make change.
Yeah. And I think if I just, you know, just before we close up, Donald, if you had to give one bit of advice to any executive team, any senior leader, anybody that looks after a team and is responsible for other individuals in this space, thinking about all the things that you've learned within Walmart and what you're now trying to do to affect change, what would you say?
Yeah, I think a couple of areas immediately that come to my mind. Number one will be, you know, own DI by business leaders across the levels. I mean, you know, across every level, and then not. I mentioned it earlier. Not exclusively depend on the chief diversity officers or office of diversities. Improve. I mean, like empower and also enable business leaders to champion DEI, and by providing them the right tools and the right resources, and educate our managers or their managers and how to lead an inclusive teams and more effectively and efficiently, because it's new, right? And if you're using the traditional way or the managerial skills, and you want to reap the value of this diverse talent pool. Second areas, I would say, everyone included. You know, everyone included is our vision, and it's very straightforward. And that means invite everyone along the journey, and including white males. And thinking about today's, I'm talking about business world, right? And in this world, and there's still 70%, about 70% of the leaderships are the white males. and you cannot ignore. You cannot DEI cannot just be the conversations among the diverse, the people of color, talent, and the woman, right? The leverage ERGs to engage a broader base of your employees through a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and offer them a safe airspace to exchange and to feel comfortable to share their experiences, their ideas and the thoughts. And our CEOs, he leads we call it the President Inclusion Council, and they meet on the monthly basis. And he often invite the ERG leaders coming to the meeting and share their connected voice with a cohort of our global leaders, and just to make sure their voice is not listened but heard, and just heard, but also take action against that, right? And the other piece I would say, I think it's a pretty essential is instead of standalone programs, and because this is still a lot of us been doing it, and we must integrate or embed DI into our talent life cycle, and from hiring to retirement. And for example, and we know for sure the training, today's training programs, by itself, it can raise awareness, but by itself, it won't change people's experience and the behaviors. So we couple unconscious bias trainings with revisiting the current policy process practice, and to make sure they are standardized, they are objective. So then you can ensure the equity, and it also the bias-free practice will be there, and then you really can impact the people's experience, and it also help change their behaviors through the combination between those two, right? Doing together. I think that's something occurred to me right away, and those three areas, I think it's critical.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Margie, I'll let you close before I finally close.
Now, I just want to, Donald, thank you. Thank you for being here. I've enjoyed our conversations. I'm so thrilled that you're willing to share them, and I hope you'll come back and do more. But for those of you that want to know more about Donald has a ton of articles out there. Yes. So you can really Google his name, or you can message me directly, and I will link you up. But he has some fantastic leadership and diversity, equity, inclusion, and driving innovation and things of that nature out there, and they're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. And it's, for those of us that have been in leadership positions for a long time, this is amazing. And it's the direction that we need to go. It's the direction that leadership needs to go. And if you have leaders in your organizations, send them an anonymous email. You know what I mean? Like, right away, start shooting Donald's philosophy and pillars and Walmart's pillars to them, because this is something that needs to be replicated across to other systems, because this is not happening, which is why we're having this conversation and all of these conversations, because it's just not happening from that perspective. So Donald, from the bottom of my heart, just thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you both for inviting me. And I silently listened to a few of your conversations online, and truly enjoy the conversations. That's why it invited me to play a role there, and to exchange. We don't really figure it out. We don't have a silver bullet. And I think one of the good things I see in our cycle, I mean, so the practitioner and professionals working in this space. So we are very open. We are very transparent by sharing the thoughts, ideas, practices. So this way we can help and support each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Donald, as you know from me, listen, thank you so much. I apologize for having my little moment with your with your metaphor. So I do apologize for that. I did my thing to try not to cry sometimes, but it came out of nowhere. So and I think your, not only just your story, but your approach is, as Margie said, it is signifying what I believe also needs to change, but also it illuminates for me what happens when you care enough, so the things that Walmart has put in place, the things that you have led, have championed, just even listening to the way that you're talking about what you're doing is because you cared enough to act, and I sometimes think we underestimate that aspect as we dive into solutions. What we can achieve when we care plus when we act is a very powerful something.
Thanks. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. All right, that's it. I'm going to close this conversation. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in and for listening. And, I really do hope you read some of Donald's articles. I hope you, go and respectfully stalk him on LinkedIn, because he's just got some great things, great perspectives. And I think, this is about crowdsourcing of ideas and who's doing what and how we're doing it, because this is bigger than us. This is about, playing our part in the change that we want to see. So, Donald, thank you again. And Margie, as always a pleasure to do these with you. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Shireen.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.